Meeting of the New Prague School Board, Independent School District 721. Meetings are recorded and can be viewed by accessing the school board page on the district website. We have no open forum tonight, but if you ever do contemplate coming before us for an open forum, be aware of the fact that there are some rules and guidelines that have to be followed, and make yourself known to those rules if you plan on ever appearing before us as an open forum. With that out of the way, I'd like to note that all 7 members of the school board are here this evening, and we'll start the evening by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this evening, we'll start out with the Spotlight on Success. And I'd like to have you, Andy, introduce our guests, please.
Yeah, I'd like Amy Walsberger, Director of Student Services, to come forward, and she's going to do some introductions of staff and students who are here to help present many of the great things happening in our special services programs.
Good evening. My name is Amy Waldsberger. I'm the Director of Special Services for the district, and I have the privilege to introduce 2 different guests that we have tonight. So we have 2 teachers coming forward to present on our early intervention program. I'll let them talk about that a little bit more in depth for you. So I will start with them. So Jody Griskavich and Megan Schultz are 2 of our early childhood special education teachers who work with our Birth to 3 program.
Hello.
Good evening.
So I'm Jody Griskavich, and this is Megan, and we work in the early intervention program. And so what is early intervention? Early intervention, we work with families and kiddos that are aged birth to 3. We work with them in their natural environments, and then we usually need to have a referral from a source. So it's either a family, or it's a doctor, or it's a family member. And then that's how we are able to then decide if we're going to be working with that family or those children. And so then I'm sure you're wondering, how do we get those referrals? So the state of Minnesota has a portal called Help Me Grow. And so there's a way for a doctor, or like I said, a family member or a family, a parent, to go in and make that referral on a website, or there is an 888 number. Otherwise, any of our New Prague families, they're able to call this number directly and then get someone in our district, rather than it having to go through the Help Me Grow portal online. And then, like I said, anybody can make that referral. And then the process, what that looks like is that once we get that referral, then our intake person will call you to kind of gather a little bit more information about your kiddo. And then it goes to our team, and then our team will call you to set up an intake. And what that looks like is just a conversation, and it's just gathering more information about your kiddo, to just kind of learn about your joys and your concerns about your kiddo, or what your doctor or a caregiver might have had as that joy and concern, and then decide if we're going to move forward with an evaluation and during that conversation, or if we're going to do a check back.
Yeah, so like Jody said, every child that is in our program has to go through an evaluation in order to determine if there is a need for us to be helping that child and that family. So we always look at the whole child. You know, there's different areas of development that we look at, and if there is a need in one of those areas, then we can move forward. And sometimes that's even a condition known to hinder development, so like a premature baby, or a low birth weight, or a diagnosed condition like Down syndrome or things like that as well. But oftentimes it is just children that might be delayed in meeting their milestones. If they're not walking on time or talking on time, we'll be able to help them as well. So on a home visit, once they're in our program, we really just jump into whatever the family is working on at that day or that time. So we schedule our visits intentionally to be going at times that are hard for the family, or that maybe are a good time that we can be working on some of those skills that are a need for the family. We really focus on building that relationship first, of course, so that we can, help empower the families and build that connection with the kiddos. And we wanted to note too that we don't bring along like a toy bag or a lesson plan or anything like that. So we really focus on whatever that routine is for the family, because we know that that's what the parents are going to be doing with their kiddos. So we work on those natural routines and use their own toys and their own environment to build the parent skills or the caregiver skills to be doing that when we're not there. The visits typically happen around 2 to 3 times a month. It really depends on the family and on, you know, what the need is and what the family's desire is. But services do happen year round, so we still get to see our little ones in the summer, just because they are so little, and that's a big gap of time to be missing. So we get to see them all year round, and they're usually around an hour, but depending on how long the kiddos last and things, that kind of varies. And then we connect anywhere in the community. So we've met at the grocery store, at the library, at the parks, just wherever the kiddo is used to going and the family wants to meet. At daycares, of course, too. So if if a child is in daycare, that's really their natural daytime setting. So then we'll help support the daycare provider or grandma's house or whatever. So we really get the opportunity to be in a lot of different places within New Brighton. Surrounding areas, too.
And we have an amazing team, so it's not just us two. There's 3 of us early childhood special ed teachers, and then we have a speech and language pathologist that's on our team. We have an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, and then we can always reach on other team members for any of our low incidence families or kiddos. So if a kiddo is deaf and hard of hearing or has a hearing disability or any vision or anything like that, we have other team members that we can also call on. And then we also have our intake coordinator, as I talked about earlier, that kind of makes that first initial call once we get that referral. And that's all of us pictured. And then, just so you guys kind of know, I'm sure from what we've kind of said, this is important to us, and it's a passion of ours. And our kids, by the age of 3, their brain has developed 80% of what it should be. And so this is just a critical window for our kiddos to get them early, to make sure that the families are, build their confidence, and that they feel like they can be an advocate for their kids. As Megan and I have always talked, like, we're the first people that some of these families even see within the school district. So we really try to build those relationships and make sure that they feel comfortable and understand how they can advocate for their children as they come into school.
And then we sent out a little survey to our families and just asked for some feedback of what their interactions have been with our program. So some past families as well as current families. And these are pictures of some of our littles that we currently are seeing. And so it's hard not to smile when looking at all their little faces. But I'm not going to read all of them. But one of the things we had asked was just to describe their interaction with our program in 1 or 2 words. And some of the responses we got were really positive. So they said impactful, specialized, amazingly supportive, welcoming, spectacular, kind, caring, and life-changing. And so just some really positive things. And like Jody said, we just really value the fact that we get to be some of the first people that interact with, or the families get to interact with us in the district. And so we don't take that lightly, but it's been a positive experience for a lot of our families. So any questions for us?
What would you say is the percentage of kiddos that are of the student class that are part of your services? So when you interact with our families year by year, what are we looking at? Gives an idea. I suppose it varies year by year.
I know,
Yeah.
it really varies, and it's a revolving door, really, because
Right.
it's not like we don't start at the beginning of the school year and end at the end. So we can get referrals, today, and then we start working with the family. So I don't know at any
And the
given...
age depends too.
Sure.
So not everybody starts at birth. Some we get
Right.
at 2, some
Yeah.
get at 2.5.
And I
But I would
suppose
say
by
I would look to
condition.
Amy, is it like 30-ish?
kiddos.
40 a year is like kind of the range.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
some families we get to work with for almost the whole 3 years, and others we might meet them at 2.5 or a month before they turn 3, and then they would come into a classroom. So it just really depends.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's awesome.
Do these students have individual educational plans written for them? And you're responsible for making
Yep.
those plans?
Yep, so it's actually called an individualized family service plan.
When they're
So-
under age
Yep,
3,
when they're
yeah.
under age 3, so it's very family-based. But yes, it basically the family can come up with what kind of outcomes that they want to work on to deal with their child's, like with their concerns or what their delay is.
And parents are involved in writing
Yeah.
those?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, they're the...
It's family-driven.
And you may go ahead.
How do you, like for a new parent who's never had a child before, are there ways for them to get information before they make a referral as to what to look for if I've never had a child before and now I have a baby who's doing something, is there some place for them to go to say, okay, this is a warning sign, I better make a referral on my child?
I mean, yes. I think doctors will usually have, families fill out paperwork, but that's really hard too because they only see the kids sometimes for 15 minutes, right? So we try to actually get into our ECFE programs, which again, I know is not hitting every single new family that's out there, but we do revolving throughout the year with our newborn talk. So
That's
any of
what I
our
wanted to
families
know,
that
yeah.
come in there, we're on kind of their rotation. And then we do tell families about, there are some websites out there that we tell them to kind of check on, which some of it is the Help Me Grow website is great. 0to3.org is another one. Pathways is another one. There's a lot of good videos that show you typical development compared to something that you should be concerned about. But we just try to get the word out there in some of those ECFE classes.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Early intervention is really touted as being very, very important, and it's so.
So when you begin servicing a child, do you typically service them all the way through age 3, or do you dismiss them at some point once they meet criteria? Yes?
Yeah, so it really varies. Obviously, the milestones continue to grow, and that expectation continues to grow as they grow, and so it just really depends. But yeah, if they are meeting their milestones and the parents don't need any support or want any support, then they can be dismissed. But it's family driven, so if there's new things that the family is like, I still am not so sure about this, then we can, continue to help support them, and we write those individualized family service plans where we come up with those goals and things. So yeah, so it just varies depending on the need.
That's why they're called individual.
Yeah.
And it could be that people are listening, so I'm just curious, this might also be an odd question, but are there certain conditions that are more common for our listeners right now that you might deal with, families that are dealing with certain things, maybe like hearing loss, or do you see certain things?
I would say a lot of our families, it's a lot of preemies, I would say, would be kind of like our biggest probably one. Or if there was like a stroke or something when they were babies.
Yeah, for like a pre-diagnosed condition. Otherwise, a lot of times too, it's just like communication delays. So, it isn't always some of those that are like a diagnosed condition, but more of, oh, my 2-year-old's not talking yet. What do I do? And we always try to say, don't wait and see. Like, we're here to help, and it's free, and we're here. So, I'd say a lot of times communication is a big one too, or a motor.
Or a motor.
So if they're not
So if they're not-
crawling,
yep.
not
Rolling,
walking.
crawling, walking. Those are good times. And we would much rather come out
Right.
and do a check-in and meet you and meet your kiddo so that then we can do a check back and then give you some tips and tricks and then check back in with you in a couple months because then we kind of know who you are and we've seen your kiddo and we don't feel bad about that at all. We'd much rather come out and do that. So.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Don't overlook anybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have like a part 2 because we're just so busy in special services. So we have just wonderful things going on. And I'm so appreciative of what Jody and Megan do. They really are the first face for many of our families, and they're delightful. They work really hard. So, and we also have 2 other educators that also have students with them tonight, and they're going to showcase something new that we piloted this year. So I have Amanda Dirks and Sam Klein. They're going to come up with some of their students, and one of them is a teacher at Falcon Ridge. Actually, she'll be moving to the middle school next year. And then one's another teacher at the high school in our special education department. She also serves as one of our coordinators on our leadership team. So, yep.
Hi.
Great.
Hello. Thank you for having us today. I'm Amanda Dirks. I work at the high school. I am the autism case manager. I'm also a coordinator at our high school.
I'm Samantha Klein. I am the one that has been at Falcon Ridge for 5 years, and then I'll be at the middle school next year. So I've been mainly working with the autism class caseload, but next year will be life skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have with us today Lorelei Hammer, who graduated this year, so class of 2025. Logan Burmel, who is incoming 11th grader, and
Drew Thomas, who is a 6th grader now.
So there'll be, a couple of them will be speaking at the end of our presentation. So some origins about our program that we wanted to pilot today. Sam and I got the privilege of attending the 2024 Minnesota Autism Conference that is put on by the Minnesota Autism Society as continuing professional development. And while we were there, one of the vendors that was available to speak to was an outreach program that pairs adults with autism with high school students who have autism. And so we thought that that was a really cool program and wanted to be able to implement that in our schools. And with the high school and Falcon Ridge being so close in proximity to each other, and Sam and I partnering in many different ways throughout the district, we felt like it would be a very good start to this program. What I saw was some students who were ready to implement the skills that they were learning in my class, and what Sam saw were some students who needed some older students to be able to connect with. And so we started this program, and we were very selective with the students that we picked because we felt like they were big leaders in our classes and were going to be good individuals to start this program with. So we together found some resources, which included a high school teen mentoring handbook and activities book by the Alberta Advanced Education, which helped me be able to prepare our high school students for what they could expect as in terms of being mentors to younger individuals, and also gave me some ideas on what we could work on for our younger elementary students. There's one other resource here, which is Building Effective Peer Mentoring Programs in Schools, written by Michael Geringer and Patty McRae. Both of those, in conjunction with each other, were really great resources for me and Sam to be able to work through when it came to developing this program, which we kicked off, I think, mid-October. So it wasn't right at the beginning of the year, just because we wanted to make sure that when we started this, that we were really doing it right. So it took us a little bit of time with the start of the school year to be able to find the right resources and the right students. So once we got things started, we
so we sent out a consent form to all parents. So everyone had to return that before we could start, which also led to the mid-October, just deciding and adding and grouping students and waiting for those. So total, we had 4 high school students and then 7 elementary students in this group. The high school students came over once a week. It was every Friday for 40 minutes. So like we said with the resources, so we pulled activities from there. So they did like get to know each other activities. They picked a travel destination to go to and talk through like prices and how you get there and how much it costs. And we did some scrapbooking. That was an interesting one to do. Candy cane. The gingerbread house. Yeah, the gingerbread houses. That was a big day. We have pictures of that one. Some outdoor play, personal safety, just like what would you do in these situations, social communication. We also have like a snack cart at Falcon Ridge. Yeah, so that's a whole different activity, but it's a vending machine where the students on my caseload go around and sell to teachers on their prep. It's like a vending machine on wheels, so they call it the vending machine. We've done it a few years, but the high school students would come and help, and they really enjoyed that instead of me. So here are some pictures. Is there 4? Yeah. So this is the famous gingerbread making, probably one of the favorites. So this would be, I think, everybody.
Yep. That was everybody
Yes.
who participated. Yep.
Except for me. I'm behind the camera taking the pictures. I was there. Oh, yeah. You joined later. Yep.
So, like I said, our individuals who are in attendance, Lorelai, Logan, and Drew. Lorelai and Drew do have some words that they'd like to share with you in terms of what the mentorship program means to them and how what they got out of the program. So we're going to do some seat swapping here. Okay. Pull that, Drew, would you?
You're the oldest.
I'm the oldest. That is right. I am the oldest. Okay. All right. Oh, this is working. Okay. Forgive me. I have my speech on my phone. I know. Okay.
You don't have to sit so close.
Oh, okay. So, hello, my name is Lorelai, as you said. So to me, the mentoring program was not just something that seemed fun. To me, it felt like connecting with kids who have felt alone for most of their life. Being neurodivergent in elementary school is very complicated because kids are reaching milestones that they are behind in. So to be a person that these kids could look up to and know that they weren't alone and that we ourselves have been through the same struggles as them was nothing short of an honor. Not only was it beneficial in high school, as Ms. Dirk said, I did graduate about a month ago. I just accepted a job as a preschool teacher at KinderCare KinderCare daycare. So I am an educator, and I have a couple friends, as we call my students, who have autism. So the mentor program had helped me prepare to work with these kids. Now, obviously these kids do not have the same disabilities as the children I worked with in the mentoring program, but very similar needs and expectations on how they live their everyday. So just to wrap this up, I hope that we can continue this with the new PEG schools because it's very crucial that these kids know that they aren't alone, that they have a friend, that someone's looking out for them, and that they too can grow up and meet these goals, meet these, what's the word I'm looking for? Milestones, and graduate as I have. Thank you for your time. And then, no, super short. All right, your turn, girlfriend. Here you go. It's your turn. Here, I'll scoop. There you go. I'll scoop.
Hello?
Yep, you're good.
I don't know how to do this. Hi. Okay, my name is Drew Thomas, like Mrs. Klein says, this teacher says. I don't know her name. But I really like working with these people because they made me feel like I was a human being, made me feel welcome. He plays clarinet, and I play in clarinet, and it was super cool meeting people who plays the same instrument and meeting new people all the time. Like Mrs. Klein, she's a super awesome teacher. The first year I was there, she made me feel welcome, made me feel kind, made me meet all these new people. Like that guy. So I really want to do that for other people, and then I can meet all these awesome peoples and meet all these new peoples I met. Because this is my third year being in Falcon Ridge or Raymond Stream. But these are super awesome people. I met so much people like you. Like I met so much new people, and I love it. And now I want to be a teacher one day.
Aww.
And that's it.
Okay.
That's awesome. Wow.
Awesome.
Oh, now your turn.
Sorry. Logan would like to say something as well.
Hello, I am Logan. Just to add on to what Lorla is saying, as a student who didn't really have somebody who was older and had the same disabilities as me, and how that helped, like people like Drew, how they were really like disconnected from other people because they didn't have the same people to connect with and the same people to explain things that only other people with the same disabilities could get sometimes. And I just think it's amazing that we can do this and how we can go help people that are younger and like us.
Oh, that's right.
Any questions?
Do you have any questions about the program at all?
I just want to say that if you've been a teacher or you've been around teachers, you know that the most important thing is relationships with students. And you've made relationships with the older kids, and the older kids have made relationships with the younger kids, and I can't think of anything more important or more lovely than this.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So I love that you say that because I just started at this preschool and learning all of these kids' names and what they like and building those connections with these kids, not even special needs children. Most of the kids I work with are I think of as oh, Miss Lorelai. Like they're like, oh my gosh, Miss Lorelai's here, and I get to play with her today. It's honestly one of the greatest feelings when you see a kid. When I walk into my building and I see a kid run up to me. So I love it.
You have a teacher heart.
Thank you.
So does she.
You all have teacher hearts.
Anybody else? Any other questions or comments?
Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we have a tradition of getting a picture with some sunglasses. So, Drew, I know you're going to like these. Come on up, Drew. Let's
Thank
all
you
get
so
a
much
picture.
for coming. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause.
Amazing job.
Nope, just the kids. Just the kids.
I'm sorry, what?
Can I stand here?
This is super fun.
Can't say anything?
This way, stand right here.
Where am I going?
I can't even get this one.
Okay, thank you. Do you need these back?
No, they're yours.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Perfect timing. Oh my. No.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great mentorship program. Wonderful.
Can I just say one thing? Miss Klein needs to get a raise.
Well, luckily you didn't take too long.
A raise. Most teachers, students get a raise. There you go. She's got an advocate.
Drew's got spunk.
Yeah, she's got spunk.
Okay, now getting down to some of the nitty-gritty here. Item 6 is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Then we go down to the consent agenda, item number 7. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Next, we have item 7.1, approval of the I'm sorry. Now we go on to item number 8, board committee reports. And the first one is Special Education Advisory Council and Southwest Metro Intermediate District. And I have the opportunity of sharing information about that. And there was no Special Education Advisory Committee meeting in the past month or two, but we did have our regular Southwest Metro Intermediate School District meeting last Tuesday. And it was a nice meeting in that we got to have graduation at the meeting. We had 4 students that were graduating from the GED program. And they were dressed up in their caps and gowns, and it was a wonderful experience. Very proud of those students for being able to make the high school equivalency. And this is another example of how Southwest Metro is a road to success for some students who have not had success before. So that was a great event in those students' lives. And I also want to mention that Andy was the the superintendent representative at the meeting. And if you have anything to chime in as far as the meeting is concerned, you sure can do so.
No, I think the opportunity to have those 4 students there who are graduating, much like we had students here share their successes, was a pretty special moment last Tuesday evening. So I was glad to be able to be a part of that celebration.
Then we also had at the meeting reports from the different directors. And probably the most important one was our financial person's report for the upcoming fiscal budget for 26. And that was the first reading of that one. And I want to say something about that, This district runs because it has contributions and support from the 11 member districts, which doesn't mean that it has a free carte blanche, so to speak, financial wherewithal. And I was very pleased with how careful they presented their budget and how they were working on ways to make sure that they did not overspend and kept the budget in line. And so it was a very good report. And the report showed that the district is making every move possible to be as efficient and as trustworthy as possible with our finances. Then the next committee that we have is the Legislative Committee. Do I have anybody that would like to speak to that?
We have had a hard time getting the legislative committee off the ground. That's on me, not Mr. Call or Ms. Christie. So we will meet, and it's hard to do a lot legislatively right now because the session is over, but we will get that committee up and running.
Next, we have Community Education.
Not at this time, no. Summertime.
Okay. Early Childhood Community Coalition.
No meetings during the summer.
Okay. And this might be kind of a trend here. Finance and Facilities, I will speak to that. We will have our meeting in July, and that date is yet to be set. Correct, Brian? Yep. Okay. And then Joint Powers, Dan? Nothing? Okay. Equity Committee. And if I could speak to that one a little bit, myself and Karen and Ann attended the Equity Summit that was held a week ago today, last Monday. And it was a very good summit, very good meeting, a lot of small breakout events that were available to us. And I found them to be very enlightening and very worthwhile. And I'll ask Karen and Ann to share also if they'd like.
Yeah, I've gone to several of these now, and every time I come out of there, more fired up about doing good things for kids. And it's such a learning experience because the people they have presenting are so knowledgeable on what they're trying to get across to both us and kids that it's really, really a good program.
I was extremely impressed with the keynote speaker. And his takeaway message was, number one, you've got to love the kids. Otherwise, nothing else happens.
And also, besides what you just mentioned, it was also a very kind of a moving experience to see that other districts are very invested in equity. They have committees, they have directors, so it's something that we will be working on at New Prague to make sure that we are not left behind as far as being equitable with what our students have available to them here in our district as well. But I was quite impressed by how other districts have taken the challenge of equity to heart. Next, we'll go down to District Advisory Committee.
Nothing to fall.
Okay. And item 8.8, New Prague Area Education Foundation.
No meeting.
No meetings. All right. Then we go to the item number 9, Superintendent Report.
Yeah, I think it was, I would just say that it's a nice opportunity for our staff to rest and rejuvenate. And I think today it hit me that this was the first day that this room hasn't been busy with adults, educators here doing a lot of professional development. So though school has been out for close to a month now, a lot of our educators are taking part in their own professional growth, whether it be through things like the Equity Committee or our internal professional development that's taking place. So in addition to getting some rest and recharging, they're also emphasizing their own professional development, so that's always a good thing.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we'll go to the referendum discussion, item 10.1.
I'm going to move to the front, and I'm going to have Director of Business Services Brian Fell join me.
Hi, Brian.
Those students were so well-spoken that the pressure is really high. Right?
The bar is up
The
there.
bar is up, so don't screw up. Tonight is really meant to be just a final recap as we go forward, not just about having the discussion, but you can see as the decision. We have worked very hard over the last 6 months or so, if not longer, to give you as much information as we can in order for you to all make an informed decision. I think tonight's presentation is best kind of described in 3 parts for you, but also for the people who are watching in the audience. The first 3 is just the most recent, the first couple slides is the most recent history. Then I go back and do a more longitudinal historical perspective, and then finally it's time for a discussion and decision based on where you're at as a board. Because again, the board chair has asked that we act by originally May, we're at June, but it was our goal to have this decision with regards to have a referendum or not by this time. So, how about we do that? Just a couple of opening thoughts, and you've seen many of these things. You know, we aren't making any structural budget reductions this year. I think that was important to continue to remind people whenever we engage in these conversations. They elicit a lot of emotions, and usually they're negative emotions, especially after 2 years of fairly significant budget reductions. So we have and will continue to be good stewards of taxpayer investment into our schools. These proactive discussions are necessary. Budget reductions and even budget reduction talks are difficult. And they can have a negative impact on our morale and our culture. That's why it's even more important for us to continue to promote, myself included, the New Prague Way. And we will, despite the challenges that we face, continue to work to have high levels of programming for all of our students. Way back this winter, either January, February, I started to use the stop sign as kind of a way for you to say, continue on, other questions you had, or for to stop. And for the point of reference for the audience, in June we got our stakeholder feedback, and I'll give you some highlights about that. And then again, we're hoping to have action on a decision tonight to whether or not to support a referendum. So when we last met, there were really 2 options. Option 1 was an operating levy, and you can see the details, and the second option was a building bond, which would be for the purpose of safety and security and deferred maintenance. And those themes come out of the really good work that was done by our facility task force. Several board members were on that, and that met throughout the winter. This mouse is not working, so I'm just going to put it away instead of continuing to click it. But before we get to that point, a couple of the options we've asked for you to consider way back at the turn of the calendar was you can consider doing nothing, you can wait for state and federal funding increases, or you can seek local funding. And if we chose to do nothing, we would need to identify what those reductions would be, prioritize those structural budget reductions. Again, structural budget reductions, we said, were anything that was $250,000 or more, we would bring to you. Different than cost containments or right-sizing the budget were things that we would just continue to internally do, because that's what we need to do in order to be good stewards of the taxpayer's investment into our schools. That wasn't an option that we went down or you chose to go down, so we didn't need to have those discussions about finalizing structural budget reductions. As a point of reference only, again, we talked about these are the things that are left on our list from the Planning for Success process, where we did an in-depth analysis of how we were spending our funds, where our funds were going, how we could find additional budget reductions in the Planning for Success process that we did in the spring of 2024. We've done our best to name those, as well as identify an approximate reduction and what that would mean. We noticed in the second 6-period day at the high school, we noticed that the number was off a little bit because we continue to talk about these. So it's italicized because the number is a little bit smaller than what it previously was. If we needed to think about reductions, whether we decided to not do a referendum, or if a referendum doesn't pass, we would internally probably come to you, if at this point with the information we have, thinking we needed to talk about having $1 million of reductions at the end of the next school year, followed by approximately $1 to $1.5 million for fiscal year 27, so the end of the 26-27 school year. Because of timing, because of the ways that that would look, I've just provided you an example of what our recommendation could be administratively in order to get to that $1 million target, using the figures that we have here. And noticing that even all of what we have here does not bring us to $2.5 million. In fact, it's about $1.8 million, if I remember correctly. So that spring of 2027, if a referendum isn't supported or if it doesn't pass, we're going to need to find additional reductions in addition to what is on this list. And again, these were things that we could potentially offer up that you would need to act on, right? But people have asked, what could it be? And so we're giving you an example of what those reductions could be. You obviously, as the board, would have to decide if that would what you would want to do. I'm going to stop here for a second for any questions, because again, this is just this list, as you can see on the screen, put into context of what it could look like if it played out without additional revenue coming into the district at the end of next school year and the following school year, the 26-27 school year. Questions, comments?
Clarify, it's what could happen. Are you presenting tonight what would happen?
I can't tell you, that's your decision, what would happen. Right now, I'm acting with the information that I have on June 23rd, 2025. A lot of things can change between now and then. Again, we have 360 days. We could have more than that. I'm telling you, if you're asking the question, are these going to be some of our recommendations if future reductions need to be made? I'm telling you they are. You would obviously, as a group, have to decide whether or not to accept the recommendation.
They would be options that would be available to us to cut the budget.
Yeah, these are the things that we have said we haven't done yet per the last round of budget reductions. And again, there is not a lot of structural things that we see that we can affect in order to decrease our costs. And so these would be a starting point. And again, these could only be a starting point. We say, for example, increase class sizes by 2. We could say you could say that needed to be more than increase class sizes by 2 if the number of the reduction number, that whatever it may be at that point, were to be larger than $2.5 million. Fair?
And then as you look at that, so if we increase revenue, when do we think, if the referendum passes, that we would have to start doing budget reductions again? If I remember the graphs correctly, declining enrollment for the foreseeable future, so I'm assuming the $2 million isn't going to cover that into the foreseeable future.
So thank you for that, and if you don't mind, I'm going to wait. There's 2 bits of information that I'd ask for you to digest tonight. Mr. Fowler will be covering some of that information, and he does his fiscal year, his budget for the next fiscal year, and I think that detail will be uncovered then. So there's this presentation followed by the approval of the FY26 budget, and I think there's more detail there. Sure.
So I would look at preliminarily FY29, FY30, somewhere 5-ish years down the road.
Would be when there would be future cuts, should this pass.
At the enrollment levels that we're projecting right now, further out we get, the more ambiguous things get.
Sure.
Makes sense. There's less known for sure details. What we know now, looking at 2029, 2030 as what, when the next wave would be, so to speak.
So that was option 1. Option 2 is state and federal funding. Again, we don't have high hopes of receiving we did receive a nice increase, 2.74%. The inflationary increase was kept in the last legislative session. But again, that's not going to be enough to not stave off reductions at some point. And again, this list would then be consistent going forward as recommendations we would bring to you to discuss at some point. The next option was, again, option 3, and we whittled that down and we developed 2 different options. The operating levy, which we talked about, which was $20 million a year, $20 million total, excuse me. $2 million a year for 10 years, and it's really a maintenance request. This is about financial stability for the short term. This is not about financial stability for the long term. This is about maintaining positions and programs. As Mr. Call referenced, we do have declining enrollment, which is a significantly hard thing to overcome. We would hope that within 5 years, because of development and other things, that our enrollment would be stabilized and headed in the other direction. But this $20 million request is a maintenance request. I want to be very clear about that, and it's for short-term financial stability. It does not mean that we are all of a sudden flush with cash. We've worked very hard to make the tax impact as less than $20 a month, or $20 a month has kind of been our target. It was during a campaign in the fall of '24. And as we'll talk about later on, that impact is right around $20 per month for a house that is valued at $400,000, which is the average home value for the school district. We thought that was a reasonable request. The second option was the bond, the building bond. And again, that was either for $20 to $30 million, safety and security. Because that involves agricultural land, that request would be less. But as we know, for those of you who were able to be here a couple of weeks ago, and this is just a little bit of a reference for the greater community, we did commission the Morris Leatherman Group to do a residential survey. These are just picked out a few slides from their work of what they have done. They had a random sample of 400 residents. You can see all the detail there. Referendum disposition. This is just, what do you think about a referendum? This was before any details were given. You can see, and this really signifies our core support and our core opposition, about 27%. That's what's really interesting and really noteworthy in this particular slide. This is without asking any details, and for those of you who are here, you heard this information from Mr. Leatherman 2 weeks ago. Once you add in details, this would be option one. And this would be if that request was for $3 million. You see support of about 63%, 64%. You see the core opposition grows to, it is 64%. The core opposition grows to 33%, which you could expect, right? Anytime you say the word tax, you're going to lose between 25 to 30% of your voters, right? So 64% to start. I did a little research of what this question was in the fall of '24, and it was about 58% at that time. And as Mr. Leatherman talked about, there's an 8 to 10% regression from the start. And if you think about where we were at in the fall of '24, that's about 50%, and that's right around where we were at. And so they're pretty good at their projections. So we have 64% supporting it, and this is with a $3 million a year per ask rather than a $2 million a year per ask. When they asked about the bond referendum, you can see the support is much less. In fact, our core support is 51% and core opposition is 41%. With a regression from the start, and after our discussions last week or 2 weeks ago, we have moved to make this just a one-question ask, because that was the will of the group at that particular time, was to really focus on one question, that question being $20 million a year. I keep saying that, forgive me. Hopes and dreams, $20 million a year. $2 million a year for 10 years. Again, maintaining positions and programs, that tax impact is right around $20 for a house valued at $400,000. So you asked a little bit about strategy and what a strategy could look like. And again, as Mr. Feld just said, that gets hard the further out you go. But if you think about if this question were to be successful in the fall, $2 million a year for 10 years, that revenue would start coming in fiscal year 27, correct? That would allow us for the short term, for the next 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years, hopefully not have to do any sort of budget reductions, again, with the information that we have at this time. Things change year to year. The further you get out, the harder it is to analyze where we were at. We still need to address at some point the facility task force recommendations, and I want to be very clear that I think that was a really well done process. I think the group did a great job of coming together and giving recommendations, taking a lot of information, and then giving the recommendations for safety and security and deferred maintenance. So what could that look like? Well, I don't know exactly, because that's your decision to tell us how to act, but you have a couple options there. You could seek a bond referendum at some point, say it be fiscal year 27, fiscal year 28, or the new legislative session, there has been some opportunities to do more school board approved levies, so you would not have to go to voters for those, to seek all of that funding. That's still pretty new. I don't understand all of it just yet. I don't know if Mr. Fell does as well, but you do have some options there as a board. You could go to the voters, or you could do some smaller school board approved levies. When that would take place would again be at the discretion of the school board. I would say between fiscal year 27 and 28 would be a good time to, right now, think about that question. Again, I'm projecting and I'm hoping that the referendum this fall will indeed pass. Okay? And then you have something else to take into consideration, and that is right around, is it fiscal year 29 or 30? We do benefit from a referendum right now that brings in $246.70 per pupil, which is $1 million a year for 6 years. That is set to expire at the end of fiscal year 29. And so the board at that point will need to make a decision how to approach that referendum that expires in fiscal year 29 as well. So whether that would be fiscal year 29 we waited to do it, whether that would be before, again, I think it's too premature to decide and tell you exactly what that would look like. But these are some strategy options and things you would need to think about as we think about not just this request, but what future requests could look like. This is additional detail. I'll pause and answer any questions that you may have. I think it's important to note that in fiscal year 28 and 29, there's additional debt coming off, so there'd be a tax decrease at that time. They're smaller amounts, but there would be additional debt coming off the books. There would be less of a tax impact to do something with voters at that particular time because of the stadium and because of other past bond referendums that we currently have.
What years were that?
I think it's 28 and 29. Again, they're smaller amounts. But again, there is debt coming off the books at that point. So again, that's a board decision based on the information that you have at that point. So my question to you all, and you can decide to have this discussion now, you can decide to have this discussion after Brian goes through the fiscal year 26 budget, is it time for the community to weigh in on an operating referendum? And again, you see the details there, $20 million total, $2 million a year for 10 years. That's the question I have for you all. I can pause now for questions that you have. You can have the discussion now, or you can wait until you see the second reading of the budget.
Is inflation attached?
Yes, inflation is attached. If that's the direction of the board, that would be the proposal.
You want to explain that just for people listening?
Inflation?
Yeah.
So you can decide the terms of a referendum not to exceed 10 years. So we have, for some reason, we have a 6-year referendum. I don't know why we have a 6-year referendum for $246.70. You can also to have inflation increased or not. The $246.70, which yields $1 million a year, does not have inflation tied to it. We would, and the board, is my understanding, would like inflation included in this request, the $2 million a year for 10 years. There are several benefits to that for us. One, we see it as a little bit of a cushion for the enrollment, the declining enrollment. It also allows us to offset the costs that the inflationary increases that we have to incur as an organization, and be able to hold true to pushing out those reductions to fiscal year 29, 30. And so it's just another opportunity that we would have to bring in a little more revenue, and doing so in a really reasonable manner. Do you want to add?
That'd be at like 2%, is that correct?
It depends. There is not a floor or a ceiling. it follows the
CPI.
CPI. Now, let's say it balloons, again, like it did several years ago. You do have the authority as a school board to decide at what you would want to cap it at that particular time. So you don't need to make that decision now, but you can make that decision year after year to say, we will cap our inflationary increase at X percent. That's your discretion as a school board.
When do we anticipate our contract renewals are going to close? Or do we anticipate we will finish that before referendum or after referendum?
So our contracts all will be, it's time to start negotiating as of July 1st. We will not have all of our contracts settled by November, early November. That's just not something that we will be able to accomplish. We're going to start to engage our different bargaining units in discussions about contracts. And it will be a decision at that point whether or not we want to do it. If we do decide, you do decide tonight to go forward with this request, whether we do that prior to the referendum being completed or after. Last time we did it after we had more clarity based on the referendum failing in the fall of '24. So it's time to start to negotiate. I can't tell you whether, I can tell you that I don't think we would have it all done by November.
And the contracts expire on July 1st?
They expire, but they continue forward. They're not expiring. They don't work under a contract. The contracts continue forward. But yes, it is time to renew as of July 1st.
And then, and we're not allowed to start negotiating them until the July 1st?
No, we're able to start negotiating.
Anytime, okay.
Yep. So we have discussions with our different groups. We have 7 different labor units, so to be able to get through all of those groups by November, I don't think is going to happen. But we have engaged some of the labor units in discussions regarding negotiations.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm wondering if you could just, again, quickly speak to the wisdom of not putting the second question on the ballot.
Well, I think it was the wisdom comes from this group and the discussion that we had, that you all had, that we had 2 weeks ago. So at the work session, again, I think we have to take into consideration needs versus wants. I think we have to take into consideration that New Prague has a tradition of really asking for what they need. Okay. We also have to take into consideration the climate of what is going on with other public entities that may be having tax increases based on decisions that they're making, right? So we're talking about the police station, and though we don't have direct control over that, I think we had pretty healthy discussion about that as part of our discussion 2 weeks ago. I think the larger the request, my concern would be that the core opposition would increase very significantly just because of the climate around taxes. There's still market volatility, as Mr. Leatherman talked about. There's tax hostility as a result of that. The larger the request, the more hostile, right, the environment may be. And this is, as the board chair said, and then I turn it over to him, this is a prioritization of our needs. You know, we have said now for 3 years, myself the last 2 years, that we need money into the operating funds in order to maintain position and programs. The community task force said we need to address safety and security and deferred maintenance. We do. Those needs are still there, and those needs will continue to be there. But our priority was going into that and continues to be funds to maintain position and programs.
Thank you.
Can I add to that as well? I think what also was an influencer was the community response. That survey had some impact on the direction as well, I believe. We had decided as a group.
I think thank you for adding that. I think this was very enlightening to do the survey and to have this type of response for the first question, which is about operating funds. And quite honestly, I was surprised to see the difference in response, or the lack of response, for the bond referendum.
It certainly is necessary, but we also want to be successful in the approach, and so I think we weighed those things out in our discussion.
It doesn't mean, again, I want to be very clear to the people that were part of the facility task force, it doesn't mean our work was for naught. That work still exists. That work still stays true. It's our job to find creative ways to tackle the deferred maintenance that don't include a tax increase. And then it'll be a discussion, depending on how, what happens this fall, if and when we want to approach that list of deferred maintenance and safety and security, because the list doesn't go away. The need is still there, and I think the work, they did a really good job in that committee. Again, I go back to the prioritization of needs.
And
Chair, I didn't mean to put words into your mouth, but I'm putting words into your mouth.
That was a quote actually from the paper.
And one of the ways that I look at it is asking for a $30 million bond referendum, I think is a big top level number and things like that. And so I think you would find significantly more community appetite for something like $1 million that's on is it a referendum for a capital referendum or something like that? So you're not going out with a huge debt splash, and it would allow us, between the money we get from the state, and if we ask for $1 million, which would put us to about the $3 million in additional tax revenue that they were asking in the survey question, I think you could find a lot more appetite for that rather than a large long-term $30 million debt. And I think it helps us bite off most of that list successfully between, that's $20 million over 10 years. That can do a lot of that list and keep us from falling further and further behind, because, we will as you defer it.
And I do think there's a lot more flexibility per the last legislative session. I have not had a chance to completely understand some of the new opportunities that school districts have to do things without a bond referendum or a building referendum, my terminology as well. But that's something we can uncover. And again, I would also say this, our facilities are in very good shape, right? They're in very good shape, so we're starting from a position of strength. I can hear Mr. Most in my head saying, but we want to maintain that they're in very good. So we're going to need to address that at some point. Again, I would go back to the discussion 2 weeks ago. Our priority was here, or your priority was here.
Most of our priorities.
Most of our priorities, yes.
I did feel that the facilities piece was big. And I think when you think about that safety component being the largest part that people spoke out about, I think bringing that to voters would probably have success. And I think if you look at that survey that said that we had roughly $3 million that they had an appetite possibly for, if that was a combination of facility and an operating levy, I would rather go for that rather than next year turning around and asking for another $1 million to $2 million for capital.
And I think with the city police station trying to bypass the voters, I think there are in Minnesota law some methods and things like that. So I think even with more opportunities from the state, there could be other constraints that come upon with community appetite for being bypassed when they feel like they would like some input.
So I'm going to turn it over to Brian for his presentation, unless anyone has any additional questions for me. Mr. Chair, is that agreeable?
That's fine, thank you.
There are more slides that I should say, but those are just reference slides that you have seen multiple times, so I won't go through those with you. But that information is available for you in your board packet.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
I have a presentation here for our FY26 preliminary budget. If you recall, last month I shared with you the general fund FY25 projected actual budget. That does not require approval. It's more of a projection of where we're going to end up. And we had our first reading for next year's budget, and tonight we'll have our second reading of that budget. Some notes about the FY26 preliminary budget. We're projecting 3,820 ADM. That would be a decrease of 86 from the FY25 projections at the end of the year, essentially. At the end of this current year, 86 fewer students. Included in that would be cost containment measures due to increased enrollment at the elementary level, resulting in a minus 8.5 FTEs. That's offset by 2 additional positions called ADSIS positions. And a note there, the additional state funding covers roughly 50% of the cost there. And so we currently have 1 ADSIS position, and we were approved by MDE to add 2 more positions there. So we're going to net a minus 6.5 FTEs, resulting in a cost containment savings of $520,000. As Dr. Volmuth referenced, we have a 2.74% increase in state aid via the general education formula allowance, and that is tied to the CPI. And so that was approved with the budget that most recently passed there. Our compensatory aid, as I've mentioned a couple times, will decrease by just shy of $54,000 for next year. We had received one-time READ Act funds in FY25, and again, one time, so they're available in FY25, but not moving forward, amounting to about $309,000 that wouldn't be available as revenue in FY26. Starting in FY26, there's a 0.75% increase in the employer's share of TRA, and so that'll be $159,000 in unfunded costs that we need to account for. Also, starting on January 1st of 2026 is the Paid Family Leave Act, and that will result in $677,000 in costs as well. For the FY26 preliminary budget, we're projecting our revenues to exceed our expenses by $623,089. And then we are projecting our unassigned fund balance to come in at 14.17%. And as we did last month, if you notice, there are supplemental materials that break down our revenues and our expenses. I'll highlight some of those here, but you have greater detail in your board packet there as well. So taking a look at our general fund here, the green column would be the revised budget for the year that is just ending here. And then the yellow column would be the projections of where we think we're going to end up. And then the purple column would be the projection, or I'm sorry, the preliminary budget for next year. And then the gray column would be the percent of total there. So you can see our general fund revenues on the top half of the page here. Originally, we were projecting $51,834,000, coming in slightly less than that due to a little bit of drop in enrollment at $51,773,382. And next year, we're projecting $51,953,702. And you can see 82.81% of that is state funding, 1.77% is federal. Property taxes account for 12.07%, and then local funds account for 3.36%. Down below, the expenditures, as with almost all school districts, about 80% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. And so you can see 60.084% for salaries and wages, employee benefits at 22%, purchase services at 10.19%, supplies at about 3.5%, equipment just under 3.5%, and then debt service and other expenditures are under 1% there. And you can see our total expenditures that we are projecting for preliminary budget for FY26 coming in at $51,330,613. Taking a look at our expenditures in a way of programs. Okay, again, the amount is going to come out to the same down at the bottom of the purple column there at $51,330,613. You can see site administration at 2.88%, district administration at 1.01%, so 3.89% for administration. Support services at about 3.5%. Regular instruction just shy of 43%. Extracurricular activities at 3.76%. Vocational instruction at 1.58%. Special ed at 19.54%. School readiness plus at 0.2%. Instructional support at 6.18%, pupil support services at 8.97%, facilities at 8.98%, and then other financing uses at 0.77% there. Our capital and LTFM projects, some major components of that for this upcoming year. Blinds at Falcon Ridge at $35,000 coming from LTFM. High school parking lot repairs at $80,000 and sidewalk repairs at $25,000 coming from LTFM. As I had mentioned in our first reading back in May, we're looking to purchase a special education minibus for $119,000. That will be coming from medical assistance funds. We're looking to purchase 3 school buses for this upcoming year at $435,000 out of our capital. Working with our technology and our network storage at $150,000 out of capital. Football helmets at $36,000 out of capital. And then 3 cars for driver's ed and employee transportation at $90,000 total, so about 3 cars at $30,000 each. 2 from the general fund, capital, and then 1 from community services. Historically then, taking a look at our unassigned fund balance, which we have talked about as probably the most commonly used measure of a school district's financial health. You can see going back to FY15, we're at 26.58%, and in red over there are the projected for FY25 at 13.43%, and then the preliminary budget has us at 14.17%. Transitioning here to the Fund 2 and Fund 4. In our packet there, we've also got a summary of our Fund 2, both projected actual and then preliminary budget for next year. Fund 2 is our food services, nutrition services budget, and then our Fund 4, which is our community services fund budget. You can see there the fund balance. So what I've got here are the fund balances. We've got our FY24 actual fund balance at $1,640,948, projecting it to be at $1.788 million in FY25, and then $1.936 million in FY26. Community services, we had a positive fund balance of $82,117 in FY24, projecting that to be a negative $98,609 for FY25. Main components there, the community services budget took on about $50,000 of chargebacks from the general fund as part of the cost containment, the structural changes that we made over the last couple of years. There was also working with some budgeting and programming with our school readiness program involved there, and also the transportation for our school readiness program. You can see there in FY26 that we're looking to have a positive fund balance of $30,374 there. So we were able to make some corrections there to get a positive fund balance for FY26. So next steps, back when we come back in September, I'll come back with updated enrollment. In October, we'll have the audit results for FY25. In December, we'll bring the revised FY26 budget, and then in January, we'd look at financial projections. Obviously now, we'll take time for questions here as I've gone through all the slides, and certainly want to answer any questions you might have.
Probably you've covered this before, but the $309,000 that we got the one time for the READ Act, what did that go to either purchase or employ or whatnot that won't be covered anymore?
So about half of it was for training.
Okay.
So to cover the day of training that was provided through that. Part of it we are carrying forward to look at purchasing reading curriculum. And quite honestly, Director, I have to go back and double check on the third component of that. But I know that part of it is for curriculum, and a big part of it was for the pay for the training for it.
So like the training is at one time, or are they going to have to do further training now that it's unfunded?
You know, I would, the ins and outs of the READ Act.
Sorry.
I think we covered most of our staff.
Yeah. I think your questions are all good, and I don't know if we have a great answer, but most of the training for all of our staff now are trained, our current staff. The question and what I know Director of Curriculum and Assessment, Marn, Baller is working on is how do we continue to make sure that staff that we bring into the organization have that training, because there's a significant amount of training, I think 6 days that staff went through in order to complete the READ Act training. So currently all of our staff are trained. How do we onboard new staff and ensure that new staff who come in, whether they come from another district or they come from a college program, that they have that training is our continued work.
Gotcha. And then you said there's a component earmarked for future purchase of curriculum, or did we already buy it?
Future purchase of curriculum.
Okay, so that's kind of sitting there waiting for that.
We decided after significant training, Marn and her team, that it wasn't the right time to purchase that training and then have a new training next school year. We wanted to be able to take the strategies and the learning that they had, put them into place, analyze and continue to look and work with staff to identify what the best curriculum is, and then have that purchase done next year in preparation for the 26-27 school year.
Okay, thank you.
Carrie, the one nice thing about this mandate is that it was funded. We've had a lot of mandates that have come down the pike that have not been, they've been mandated, but they haven't been funded. So it's good to see that the legislature did its due diligence and funded it.
With that, but to Director Cuff's point, for this time and place, it's been funded. It's
Right.
now on the district and our districts, just like districts across the state, to ensure that future staff have that training, right? And again, there's time and there's money that goes into that. So I don't have that detail in front of me, but I know that's one of the things that they are working on.
That's in the future. Any other questions for Brian? And you'll have questions after we have the motion and second for further questions too, if you so desire, but go ahead.
And so I was surprised when you highlighted the debt service number. Where does the rest of our debt service live if it's not part of this budget? I want to say it's around $6 or $7 million
Yep.
a year.
So it's Fund 7, which would be on another handout that was in the packet, Director Call. And for FY26, we're looking at our revenues of $7,157,464 and our expenses at $7,026,285.
And so total expenditures in the school district are somewhere around 60 million-ish, 61?
Yeah.
Is that a good guesstimate?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, you'll look at the general fund and what are we at, 51 million there. And then when you add in the 02 and the 04 funds, that gets us to right around 60. And then when we add in the debt service, we get to 67 million. So our total expenditures are 66,637,656.
Okay.
Yep.
And then for Fund 2, can you remind me again when we get into trouble with fund balance in 2?
Yep, so you're not, they want it closer to 3 months, and we're closer to 6 months. They have pushed out the, kind of the deadline for another year, and so we have to have a plan to start to spend down that fund balance within a year. And there are some things that we're working on and looking at that would help to spend down that fund balance.
Do capital projects related to food services count? Can they be spent out of that budget?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to try a question just to see if I can figure out what you're talking about. The fund balance, the unassigned fund balance we had, can we use that for maintenance? Can we use some of that extra fund balance that we have at 14.17? Can we use some of that for maintenance?
Can.
Okay.
But you draw down the fund balance. Any other
And if I may, as a point of reference, not at this time, but in a future discussion, I do think we need to have a discussion about where you want that fund balance to sit. The board policy is somewhat vague. It says around 8%. For a district our size, 8%, considering the stats that Director Call just talked about, I might encourage us to think about that number being a little higher than 8%, because the money could go away pretty quickly. Not that we would spend it frivolously, but Mr. Fell and I have talked about whether or not that to bring a recommendation to increase that percentage to beyond 8%. Again, nothing to act on tonight, but just a point of reference.
Any further questions for Brian? If not, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the FY26 budget.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And next, we'll go on to item 11.2, the resolution relating to the determining and necessity of approving a new referendum revenue authorization and calling for a special election thereon. We could start a discussion now, or we could have Dan read the resolution, and then we could have a motion on in a second, and then we could continue the discussion. What's your favor? Would you like to discuss it further now, or would you like to have the resolution read first?
I think it's a good idea to have a resolution read just for people out there who might want to have all the wording in the right places.
Any other thoughts on it? Okay, then I'll ask Dan to read the resolution, please.
And then do you want just the first one, or do you want the special election one too? Are they in the same?
The special election one also, because that does tell
So
where the
I'll hit 'em both.
elections are held. And
Perfect. So, be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 721 in New Prague Area Schools, Minnesota, as follows. It is hereby found, determined, and declared as follows. The board has investigated the facts and does hereby find, determine, and declare that it is necessary and expedient to increase the school district's general education revenue by $510 per pupil, subject to an annual increase at the rate of inflation. The proposed new referendum revenue authorization would be first levied in 2025 for taxes payable in 2026 and applicable for 10 years unless otherwise revoked or reduced as provided by law. The question on the approval for the new referendum revenue authorization of the school district shall be submitted to the qualified electors of the school district at a special election, which is hereby called and directed to be held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. The school district's combined polling place and the precincts served by the polling place as established and designated by resolution of the board pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205A.11 are hereby designated for this special election. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to cause written notice of the special election to be A, provided to each county auditor at least 84 days before the date of the special election, B, provided to the Commissioner of the Department of Education of the State of Minnesota, the Commissioner, at least 74 days before the date of the special election, and C, mailed to every taxpayer in the school district at least 15 days, but no more than 45 days prior to the date of the special election. D, posted at the administrative offices of the school district for public inspection at least 10 days before the date of the special election. And E, published in the official newspaper of the school district once each week for at least 2 consecutive weeks, with the last publication being at least 1 week before the date of the special election. The notice of special election shall be prepared in substantially the following form. And then it has it there. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. Now we can have discussion on,
Just that resolution?
the one that was read.
That's, we don't have to approve it before we have a larger discussion about the referendum, correct?
We'll vote on both of those after the second one is read. So we will have a discussion on both parts.
Both parts, but how about the larger referendum discussion?
Go ahead and read the second part then.
Oh, second one? All right. All right. So notice is hereby given that the special election has been called and will be held in Independent School District number 721, New Prague Area Schools, Minnesota, on November 4th, 2025, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. to vote on the following question. The Board of Independent School District number 721, New Prague Area Schools, Minnesota, has proposed to increase the school district's general education revenue by $510 per pupil, subject to an annual increase at the rate of inflation. The proposed new referendum revenue authorization would be first levied in 2025 for taxes payable in 2026 and applicable for 10 years, unless otherwise revoked or reduced as provided by law. There is a yes and a no. By voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. Passage of this referendum will result in an increase in your property taxes. For the ballot question, the property tax portion of the revenue authorized will require an estimated referendum tax rate of is 0.060061% for taxes payable in 2026 of the referendum market value of all classes of taxable property in the school district, as defined by Minnesota statutes, section 126C.01, subdivision 3. Which excludes certain agricultural property, seasonal property, and post-secondary student housing. The projected annual dollar increases for typical residential homesteads, apartments, commercial industrial properties, and most other classes of property within the school district are as shown in the table below, subject to an annual increase at the rate of inflation. Agricultural property will pay taxes for the proposed referendum based on the value of a house, garage, and 1 acre of land. Seasonal recreational residential property, i.e. cabins, will pay no taxes for the proposed referendum. The figures in the table below are based on school district taxes for the new referendum revenue authorization only and do not include tax levies for other purposes. And then there is a table, and then there are some polling places listed, and all qualified electors residing in the school district may cast their ballots at the polling places listed above during the polling hours specified above. A voter must be registered to vote, and to be eligible to vote in the special election, unregistered individuals may register to vote at the polling places on election day. There a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, now let's have a discussion on both of the motions, and then we'll vote on them separately.
I get a point of clarification that unless we're sharing it with somebody, there's a $20,000 fee to run the election, roughly.
I would say approximately. I can get that information just by having the attorneys look at the ballot language. There is a fee to run an election. So usually we say $20,000. I don't know if it's exactly that, but I think that's approximate, yes.
And the ultimate cutoff is August 12th. That's 86 days out, correct? Or 84? whatever's in there.
I would have to do the math. It's somewhere around there.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's
from
somewhere
what-
around there,
okay.
yeah. Is it 86 or is it 83 or 84?
It's somewhere in there,
Somewhere
but I
around
think it
there, yeah.
calculated out in another presentation as August 12th.
Somewhere, yeah.
Well, I'd like to speak to it. I'd like to pass the resolution for the simple fact that we need to have funds available to us to maintain the program that we have right now. Without passing the referendum, it would cause a further erosion in the programs that we have. And we have already experienced an erosion in the programs that we offer our students. So this would be a maintenance type of program, and I want to really emphasize that. I know there were some people that were hoping that if we would pass the referendum, that it could maybe help put back programs that have already been taken away. And I'm afraid the monies that will be available will not allow us to do that. But it will at least be there to prevent a further erosion. So therefore, I'm speaking in favor of passing the resolutions so that we can have a maintenance of our program and stop further erosion of our programs for our students in our schools.
And I'd like to speak to it as well, that to the listeners, in agreement with Denny, that we were strategic in the value that we chose of the levy so that it would be affordable. And again, our district has sought to go for what's necessary. We would like to bring everything back, but we were very conscious of trying to make this affordable for people. So just to bring you back to $20 a month, roughly, on the value of a $400,000 home. So this was well thought out. We want to be successful in it. We want to maintain what we have. We have aspirations to grow and bring things back at some point, but like Mr. Volmo said, we will maintain an excellent program. It's what we have. We offer the highest education that we're capable of doing, and we don't want to lose what we have. That would not reflect well in our community. We want our community to continue to grow and be a desirable place for people to come. I would like my children to stay here and raise children here. So we want to be an attractive place, and we have just an excellent education system here, and our town is occupied. I think the majority of jobs in this town are in our schools. So there is just so much to be said on this. If we wanted to go for a higher number, we would have likely opted for that just to continue to enhance what we have. But at this time, our goal is to maintain what we have, which is excellent. And again, we want it to be affordable. So I too am behind this approach.
Any further discussion?
I just have some
Carrie,
comments.
go ahead. Mhm.
I'm just going to read them. Again, I'm going to bring up the facilities component, and that, we talk about that's in the future or whatnot. Well, we're also saying we need money now in operating that we're not kicking down the street. So I think both of those things are very important. I believe they would be well received by the community with the right education campaign. And if in fact this cut means that there would be high school 8 FTEs cut from high school, which we need to commit on, there's a plan if these things happen. Middle school, 8 FTEs, elementary school, 4.5, busing 3. If those are the things that would happen, that will greatly negatively impact our staff and our students, and our kids lose. For those reasons, I am for it, but I'm for a portion of it going to facilities as well. I also think that there needs to be a deep dive after this before we ever go back out again, where we use our budget committee and we get together and we talk about things that the community sees in there. We talk about real budget things rather than like 3 or 4 assumptions, because I think there's value in that, in seeing what's out there. So it is my hope in the future, and I am happy to do all the work in partnership with people to find those things. But I think that's super important, and I think that's a huge commitment to the community we need to make. And then just that we do have till August 12th, if there's any last minute things we want to discuss. And just cognizant that if we lose, we're also losing $20K or whatever it costs in election fees.
Any further discussion or questions?
And so I have a couple principles. They're my common principles. So many of you guys have heard them before. One of the things that we always talk about is trying to maintain education as it is, or restore to what it was. 5 years ago, we could see the budget cuts that we are doing now coming, and we made no changes in advance as those were coming on. Into the future, we see pretty significant changes that are going to happen in education when we look at the fiscal health of our state, which is most of our funding, when we look at the fiscal health of our nation, which is the second biggest portion of our funding. Both of those entities are going to be unable to fund their mandates even worse than they are now. And districts will best serve their students both now and in the future that are willing to look at what that's going to look like 10 years into the future, restructure our facilities, restructure our strategies in order to be able to be on a sustainable plan long term. And what is fairly clear to me as we talk about this, that our goal is to avoid those hard decisions now, because it will get us another 3 to 5 years down the road. But these problems build and they cascade, whereas restructuring that happens today to a sustainable education model makes it so it has to be way less drastic than waiting into the future. The same is going to be true with Social Security Trust Fund. When it goes broke, it's going to be 25% cut rather than addressing the issue today, right? And so that is one of the biggest concerns I have is we are not, as a board, making any structural changes that can make our district sustainable long term. And that's got a personnel component, since that's the biggest portion of our budget, that has a facilities component, that all those components are there that we have to be looking at long term to, to protect ourselves against the tail risk of, if we don't get tons of new building and have a huge influx of students, we will be in crisis as it continues to drop by 80 students, and that compounds year over year and decade. And so that's the first principle there. And then the second principle goes to immediate problems. For the last two referendums, my main issue of opposition has been that our school district is not very responsive to a significant portion of our community. And so, for example, one of the best attended meetings we had was on our transgender policy, which we have implemented, I believe, but do not have published, and we did not address in any meaningful way any of the multitude of parents who showed up to that meeting. And that erodes trust in our district. The only outcome of that was our bathroom signs, which further eroded trust. And so we often say that we have to explain to the parents why our curriculum is good, why the decisions we are making is good, and things like that, but perhaps a little more introspection into what we're doing and why people find some of our curriculum, some of our DEI policies and trainings and things like that so distasteful, rather than just dismissing everybody as being not able to comprehend or understand the wonderful things that we think we're doing. I believe it's generally done with good intent, but as we know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Right, and then the last item that I'll highlight on is, in my time on the board, we've had a hard time doing anything concrete or meaningful to help improve the academic outcomes. And so, if we look at correlation into the state, amount of money spent has very little correlation with academic outcomes, and more money will only be effective if we are willing to set both standards, policies, and plans at a board level to improve the academic performance in our district, right? I asked somebody recently what we had done recently in the last couple of years to improve academic performance as a board, and the only thing we had was to implement the READ Act, which was mandated and pushed on us by someone else. And so I would feel significantly more comfortable even putting more money and going to bat for more money than this that we're asking, if I actually had confidence that we would be willing to set the standards, aggressively pursue our academic performance, set measurable results that we judge ourselves by, that have meaningful meaning, and that we hold ourselves accountable to. And so those are the main reasons why I continue to recognize we could greatly do wonderful things if we increased some of our spending, but if we just increase spending without addressing any of these core underlying issues, we're going to follow Minnesota down from, we used to be one of the highest states. We've been seeing some of our academic performance slip, and we'll continue to do that unless we break from the crowd that's rushing in Minnesota and some of the things that we're doing and say we can plot a better course for the children of our community. And so I would love if we could address some of those things, parental bill of rights, set some good academic standards, some of those things, you could start getting me excited about going into the community and knocking doors for it. But if we're just going to say we want more money to do exactly as we've been doing, it's really hard for me to believe that it's going to make a material difference.
Any further comments or questions? Or if not, I'll have you take a roll call vote of the two resolutions, please.
All righty. The first one, the resolution for calling the election, Karen.
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Carrie. Yes. Jean.
Yes.
Dan. No. And then the second one for the notice of special election, Karen.
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Carrie.
Remind me how that one differed.
It's just the details of the election, the details of the question on the election, and then the locations and the tax rate table.
Okay, so that was the one with the question.
Yep.
I know then.
Right. No. Let's see. Jean.
Yes.
And then Dan. Yes. Both motions carried.
Pardon me, I didn't hear what you said.
So I think both motions carry?
Both
Yep.
motions carry. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Next item is the item 11.3, resolution approving the 10-year facility plan for the long-term facilities maintenance revenue program. You have that, Dan?
Oh, you want me to read it already? I thought there was a presentation. Cool. All right. Whereas the Minnesota legislature passed legislation affecting school district revenue for long-term facilities maintenance, and whereas the Minnesota Department of Education has determined that to access long-term facilities maintenance revenue, school district must approve a 10-year facility plan, and whereas that 10-year facility plan must be updated and approved annually and reported to the Minnesota Department of Education every year, and whereas the New Prague Area School Board has reviewed the long-term facilities maintenance revenue program and has reviewed the school district's 10-year facilities plan. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 721 that the 2026-2035 10-year facility plan be approved for submission to the Minnesota Department of Education. Is there a motion for that?
Are there any questions or comments about the resolution? Go ahead.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion before a vote? All right, Karen,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Dan, yes. Motion carries.
Next, item 11.4, resolution to commit funds for future severance and other post-employment benefit payments.
Whereas the current master agreements with principals and technology staff, including a severance or other post-employment benefits provision that represents a future liability to the school district, whereas GSB 54 reporting guidelines allow by board resolution a school district to commit unassigned general fund balance to account for future severance and other post-employment benefit liability. Now therefore be it resolved by the New Prague Area School Board of Education that New Prague Area Schools will commit a portion of the unassigned general fund balance to account for future severance and other post-employment benefit liability to enable better planning for future payments. As it desires, the school board can adjust the amount of money committed for these purposes within the general fund balance. The Board of Education committed $78,182 in general fund for fiscal year 24-25. New Prague Area Schools expects to pay $0 in post-employment payments during fiscal year 25-26. The total amount of the general fund committed at the end of fiscal year 24-25 is $78,182. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Take the roll, please, Dan.
Karen,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Dan, yes. Motion carries.
And finally, item 11.5, resolution to make permanent fund transfer from Fund 01 to Fund 02.
Whereas the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program regulations do not allow nonprofit school food services accounts, NSFSA, to absorb operating losses due to bad debt. Whereas non-NSFSA funds must be used to restore identified and recorded bad debt. Whereas the New Prague Area School, NSFSA, has identified and recorded $133.20 in bad debt in the Nutrition Services Fund 02 as of June 30th, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved by the New Prague Area School Board of Education that the New Prague Area Schools will transfer $133.20 of its unassigned general fund balance to the Nutrition Services Fund 02 effective June 30th, 2025. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments?
How many times can you say NSFSA in a row without?
Did I mess one of the ones
Not
up?
at all. I was impressed.
So at least twice. All right, Karen,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Dan, yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. I now I'll ask for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.